just the thing is, every time we do this, I laugh now because we have to do the run up. Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast.
Hello. Sorry, that was so. What's her face from Harry Potter, the the Dumbledore replacement. Hello. Oh no, actually, it was more. Actually, it was bloody Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello, my children.
Series. Yes, that's what it is. Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. Got to do the arms.
Yes.
With me, as always, back again and again, is Hamilton. Hey!
Hello, Fiona. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Well, I'm very excited to talk about today's topic. I'm excited. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And who cares about work? I don't.
How do I answer this?
But yeah, how about yourself? How are you?
I'm good. I had a fantastic trip to the Tip.
Woohoo! Exciting.
That's all I could say.
An adult job there.
A very adult job. But there you go. There you are. But here to talk about some other exciting things. More exciting things. That's what. Yeah.
Yes.
For other exciting things.
Yes. Like cue the music. Today.
Yes.
Today, guys, we are talking about Keys to the Golden Vault, the latest anthology that Dungeons & Dragons have eventually released after you know what at the beginning of the year, and and it is a anthology of heists and heist adventures going up to levels 1 to 11, essentially.
Which is actually how many there are, right? That's how it is. I figured that out too late. There's 11 of them.
I think there's 13, isn't there?
Is it 13?
13 adventures.
13 adventures. I think I got quite confused because I was thinking I'm nearly at the end here, and then there was more than I thought there was.
They've doubled up on levels 5 and 8.
That's what it is. Right, there you go.
But yeah, so each one of these adventures essentially is sort of a self-contained heist-themed or heist-related. And essentially it's introduced this idea of the Golden Vault, which I didn't really realize until I started reading it. And obviously with now the release of all the little videos, is that the Golden Vault is an organization a la Mission Impossible, a la MI5, etc. The secret organization.
IMF is the Mission Impossible one, by the way.
Someone there might have watched it a few more.
Buff the nose. I played the N64 version of Mission Impossible way too much, so that's why.
Oh well, there you go. But yes, essentially, it is this secret organization that aims to do good in the world,
right wrongs and stuff, isn't it? Sort of like if it can.
It talks about and it's based on one of the good aligned outer planes. It doesn't say where, so obviously you can do wherever that is, and it's just that idea that basically do good no matter what the cost, which I think that's really cool because again you could ease instantly. I know this is Fiona's twist on everything, so you could be like, we have to do good, but the cost is so great, and what the moral implications of that is. But yeah, really interesting idea. And what I quite like, just straight off the back with this book, is that it instantly says you could do this as a series, as one shot in and out of itself. You can sprinkle it into a campaign you're already going in, like you are approached by an agent of the Golden Vault that could offer this to you as a sort of like, we're going to do a side quest whilst the main campaign goes on and does different things. Or you could start from level 1 and go all the way up and do that like heist after heist after heist and build up the crew essentially and build up the people like who are involved in it. And that to me sounds really fun actually, because all these heists are very, very different. All the adventures feel very, very different.
And it actually aims for that and actually achieves it, I think, in the end, because the way that they've all worked out and being perfect little individual and very unique in the sense of what relates. They're not unique in the sense that they're all heists, but unique in the sense that their relationship to different sort of storylines could work quite well in the sense that like, if you're like, there's one that particularly relates to, isn't it the Shard of the Accursed, which relates to a Radiant Citadel storyline. That's the right one, isn't it?
I think so. That the Concordant Express also has a similar theme to the Radiant Citadel one as well.
Yeah,
because our Karen Sangar, it references that's one of the planes in the Radiant Citadel as well. But you could really just put this any of these heists you can switch to your own thing because they are quite self-contained and the sort of the main juice of it is in the center of it. One thing I quite like about it is that it gives options right at the beginning in the Golden Vault, talking about like how to give complications to heists. Because we've seen those movies, right? We've seen Ocean's 11, and they don't think about this one thing, but then they do, you know, all that sort of thing. So this idea that whatever it is they're trying to steal, or, you know, if it's a person or an artifact, etc., it's not the right MacGuffin, so to speak. It's moved somewhere else. They get to the place, it's not the jewel, it's a fake. They put it somewhere else. So that's quite interesting. The other one, which I really like, and I think comes into the Critical Role Call of the Neverdeep one, is this idea of a rival crew that is working at the same time. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that idea, that because then you've got these, you know, other people doing it the correct way, in quotation marks, or doing it in a way that really sort of, you know, aggravates it. So yeah, you can have people working against each other, which I think is really cool.
On the intro bit, because this is the stuff, because the book, the way it's laid out is you get a very short, condensed introduction, which tells you how to use these adventures, how to run them as a general rule of running heists, and then a bit of information on the key for the actual Golden Vault itself. And I mean, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 10 paragraphs probably on what the Golden Vault is. It's not a lot,
no,
and it's not too much. You know, it's pretty much, it's all disparately run and it's all cellular structure, so people don't know each other, and you can't take it down because of, you know, you only know the people in your cell. I must admit, though, the heist complication things I thought was a bit weak, right? Because I thought there'd be more. You think for a book that's all about heists, having one that's like, well, you can move the MacGuffin, which is the term, the movie term for the you know, the Ark of the Covenant is a MacGuffin.
Yes.
As it is the thing that is the reason you're doing the adventure, but the actual story is the important bit. And the rival crew, as you said, I exactly came to mind the Call of the Neverdeep. Also, it's just like when I've talked about my Dragon Heist thing so many times, but the fact that in that you can run that way, in the fact that you're one of a crew who's after this treasure hoard, and the way that the game's set up is there are 4 villains that you can choose from. Well, that also infers that there are 4 competing teams of people that are trying to get the same thing, as well as the actual city itself and any treasure hunters. So I ran rival crews in one of the bits that they had to do, and it is a really great way to add tension, more conflict, particularly if you're thinking like they've cased the joint and, well, there's not much security here. Well, there's no chance of encounters, or you don't want the encounters to be too much like stealth. Oh, we've been caught by a guard, or let's get a way out of it. When it's clearly like, you're here, we're both after the same thing, fight. And there's no like, we could be loud, and you can have a proper combat sequence. I was like, okay, so that's cool. So where's the like other, like, where's like a list of other complications, or like, here's other things that you can run in a heist. I don't know. I was thinking about the inside man as a classic trope. You know, one of you is a spy for another network.
Literally, that's what I was going to say. Is somebody is a betrayer, and you agree with that person beforehand, and you give them all the same. They have just a different agenda and stuff. And because that will be delicious.
One of my first DM, when I came back to D&D, he did a one-shot for us where he'd written himself, and he's a game designer by trade, so he's pretty good. But it was like, you're all the guards come to a building that's being heisted by a famous famous master thief, and you're the guards of the city. And so you rush in and you find, and it's at a library, and one person turned up, one of our friends was worked at the library. And I was like, I don't trust this person from the start, because they said some really weird things. But I was like, okay, fine, we'll go along with it. And so we went along, and they're like, oh, I saw them. They just ran down there. And then it was like, and you would kind of feel like you're chasing after it. But the whole thing was that they were actually the thief, but they'd made us go through all the processes to get us all the way. And it was a really great sort of twist. And I feel like twists and, you know, a load of traps, or like, here's a bunch of like, you want to make your own heists, or your own, here's like what you can set as his security measures that you could use for your vault, or maybe you do a maze, or here's a load of spells that are really specific to these things.
That would be really helpful, actually. Reskinning traps as security measures, and being like, what the top 5 ones that would be in a manor house, or ones that would be in a dungeon, that would naturally occur, the Indiana Jones rolling ball thing. So I do think I think they skimped out a little bit on that. I do, my sort of critique of it is that I wish there was more stuff on the Golden Vault. Who's the head of it? You know, is there going to be a heist in the Golden Vault itself, whatever that is? Is there a headquarters? You know, so for me, there's little bits we're missing. I think the other thing I was going to say for complications was, so I said about the betrayers. Oh, like you basically said it, like the person who's given you this quest, because quite a few of these people, you get the mission from your handler and then you go meet the person of interest who's, the contract person who's got you in. That person could literally just take it from you. That's sort of, they're pulling that out from under your legs, so to speak.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think when you look at like the Radiant Citadel as an example of something similar, like the Radiant Citadel gets a very good like intro bit. There's a lovely map. Obviously, I know there's maps and maps are always great, but there's a whole point about the trades and the sort of kingdoms and groups that have all come together to join this disparate place. All about the jewels, the Concord of Jewels, which is like the people that run the Citadel.
Dawning Cardants, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, so the Incarnates, the Speakers for the Ancestors, the Defenses, Legends and Lore, all these sorts of things. And then you get to the adventure. So you've got this whole like basis. And I'm just looking at it now, and I'm just trying to find about the Candlekeep Mysteries, which is another one. You end up with that introduction was a little bit lighter, though, wasn't it? As in, it had entering the Candlekeep, defenses and decorum sages, and that's a much smaller space, but at least you've got quite a lot of lore. I'm scrolling for quite some time about people that work there.
Candlekeep, because it has a dragon underneath it that comes out that's been like trained. So there's a lot of stuff here, whereas this feels a little bit not as fleshed out, presumably because they want to give space over to the heist itself. But I would have liked I don't know, the head person that you could bring in, maybe a bit of history about the Golden Vault.
I just think like you could have at least had a headquarters, people in charge, some history, a bit more lore. I just think it's stuff that we always say we're always enjoying reading, like in the Minks and Boos, that is our classic always go back to. But it's just that sort of like scene setting. Because the way that it's written is like, okay, basically it's the anonymous IMF sort of, which they do play on with if you take this quest, if you choose to undertake it instead of this mission, if you choose to accept it. Which is fine, and that's great, but that is a singular way of running the spy genre. But it'd be lovely if they did I don't know, I've got my sort of idea of like a MI5 building now with your Q and your M and your C and everything like that, all in the sort of C's the actual real MI5 person, isn't it? MI6 person.
Yeah, that's the other thing, complications wise. Why don't you have MacGuffins of your own, a magic item they give you to use at a certain point to
here's some spy equipment.
Yeah, why not? Like, here's equipment on loan, and you have to do it in certain, like, it just, again, maybe it's a full fight, but it's that sort of thing going, it's there, it's like the pistol in Act 1 is going to be shot in Act 3,
the Chekhov's gun, it is, isn't it?
The gun of magic missile.
No, but it's like that. It'd be lovely if you did, like, I don't know, I just think I feel the adventures run really well, and I think that they read, and we'll get onto them, but I think it's just this background stuff is like, how cool would it be? They've gone down one route, but how cool would it be if it's like, you could style it, the Golden Vault, as 3 different ways. One is the MI5 amorphous, but you have or you could run this as like, you are like MI5 people with an auto gnome Q, called Qbert or something like that, who just does all this crazy stuff, and then you've got like, you can have another sort of spy network. I don't know, it'd be fun if they had different ways of running it, or had something particular.
Let's then go on to these 11 adventures. Obviously, we're not going to go into all of them in excruciating detail, but I think what's great is that they all start the same way. You get a magical key that goes into your little music box, and the key is very descriptive of what the adventures are going to be about, which is very similar to another RPG called Bluebeard's Bride, where you describe the key and the door it goes into, and then the horrors that are inside that room based on some questions to the players.
And then the horrors that are inside.
So you imagine you put in the key and it's like, oh, there's a skull on this. As the music box opens, the music box tells you who you need to meet, and then you go and meet that person of interest, or get a bit more information about the thing, and then you go off and do the mission, and then you hopefully come back. But what's the most important bit is that the players get a version of a map of the area. And what's interesting, I didn't realize this until the full book came out, but in the sort of free sample adventure, Prisoner 13, you get 2 maps of the areas, like a blueprint sort of map, and then the official map that the DM uses. But the maps in these different adventures, some of them are hand-drawn, some of them are, quite a few of them are missing lots of information. And it's I love that because it makes sense because players are always like, I need a map. I can't visualize this. And then all right, here is a map. Here's the blueprint, which you can bring up at any time. So you can work. And I feel for me, it makes sense to play these. I know we're still in an online sort of state of running D&D just now. I'd love to do this around the table and you give out the map and then they're just there pointing at it, having their minis going, oh, we're over here.
Like the classic picture they have in the front bit where you're all like pouring over the map. I do also like how the maps are sometimes hand drawn, and it very much says, oh, the person isn't an artist, so you've got to take some license. And there's things like on the first one, the Merkmeyer Malevolence, it's got like stairs down to basement question mark in this area. Yeah, exactly. And it is very good. And that sort of thought and attention has been put into it.
I was going to say, it feels very much evocative of the person who's giving it to you. So like the Prisoner 13 one is a proper blueprint that's come from somewhere. But as you said, some of these people are people on the inside and they're just doing quick sketches. And one
of them's done by like an engineer and it's very engineeringly laid out and stuff, which I quite like. And the Merkmeyer one's on a piece of paper with they're a scientist, so it's on their headed paper and stuff like that. It has a real quality to it. And also I was going to add to what you said at the beginning is that you do get the keys, but you don't have to use these keys. As we said, you sometimes have like, oh, if you want to run this adventure by one of you knows the person who's looking for the artifact, or being contacted by someone who knows them, or you've run into them, or you're in the village, or etc. etc. So there are other ways to go about it.
Because it talks about using the Golden Vault as a patron, which comes into the Tasha's rules. So I quite like that. And I've not really used. I've talked about patrons before on this podcast, and I think they're really interesting, and it gives a good motivation for why a group of people who don't necessarily have. Who don't know each other from beforehand, they're drawn together by a common cause, and having the Golden Vault as that common cause is a really good thing. But also it means there's again a little bit of information in that about to run the house is like letting people know, like, okay, you can play similar characters, but certain heists require certain skills. So we joked before about like, is it just a team full of rogues breaking in? Is it going to be who's the fixer, who's the face person? All that sort of thing. So I think having a good conversation as a session zero, or anyway, like bringing characters in, like they are specialized, they are experts at certain things, and then they have to work together. And I think it really gives them the chance to shine depending where they are in the mission.
Being able to, if you're going to run like multiple versions, like multiple adventures with the same party is also like trying to think about because their different ones have different skills, but I do think there is going to be a tendency towards your more stealthier ones. You don't want a heavily laden heavy armored paladin who's got a disadvantage to stealth checks always going through it probably won't work. I mean, fine, do it, it's always fun, but it kind of feels very much down that route. But then again with D&D is that you do anything, it sort of is fine anyway, and you just have a lot of fun and it doesn't matter.
So I guess it's that sort of thing that if you love, like, say for example, I mean, it's the genre, right? If you love heist films, there's certain tropes and stuff like that. Similar to horror, there's certain tropes, and just letting people know on board that there are certain things that usually happen in these things just means everyone's on board and making that happen organically, which I think is really good. And just to move back then to the adventures, so what I find really interesting is that the heists themselves, they're not your usual, we're going to rob a bank vault. Like that, you have your typical, there's a Nine Hells themed casino one, which is great. I quite like that one. That's the second one. Is, I'm going to say this one, this Stygian Gambit. I bet that's a Chris Perkins written one, by the way. I think he's just obsessed with hell. You have like one that's you go into a trapped mansion in the reach for the stars. Prisoner 13, which is a great one. You break in and almost do a prison break out to get this person who has the knowledge of where a vault is, which I think that's a really good one, actually, really interesting, because it gives you the GM a really good character to role play. I think that's really good. But then the two I wanted to kind of mention before going on to the one that we both really like is Toxworth's Clockworks and quite
a different thing,
and the Heart of the Ashes as well. So this idea that the villain, certainly in the Clockworks one, has taken over this town and told people to go away, but actually I think an incredibly tragic story as they're changing themselves into a construct, and they've just lost their mind to whatever madness in quotation marks, and it just. And it doesn't really, from the quick look I had of it, I'm sure there's a way that you don't have to take them out and kill them.
No, the way that so I mean, if we're going to go through in them, the Clockworks one that you just need to shut down their machines, which is there's a way that you go into their
some sort of key or something.
There's a key without giving it too away, but there is a way that you the code that unlocks a key that gives a box that gives the key that then turns off their automatons, which are continually making more of their machines. So once you've done that, that's really all the thing you need to do, and then you can deal with them however you want to. But I think that the point is that they've kind of gone a little bit crazed by being overly clockworked or machined. That one was one of those ones because you start off with that Merkmar one, which is quite fun in the sense that it's kind of got that Natural History Museum. What's that movie with Nicolas Cage?
National Treasure.
National Treasure, that's it. Yeah, which if it was English would be called Natural History or something. Yeah. National Treasure, and that's kind of fun. And then I thought Stygian Gambit, it's going to be a casino, but it was really it wasn't quite EXU.
Yes.
If you know what I mean, which was the heist that they did in the casino there, amazing, good. If you want, that's the one they should have done. Reach of the Stars, I think I'm going to have to steal this for Bowie's because it's literally the space I was about to take people to. It's got the same story. A guy gets kind of mucked up with some otherworldly far realm beings.
Yeah.
Prison 13 everyone's probably read, but I thought that one was interesting, but then actually, and I think the fun thing about that was that the difference it had was that you were pretending to be other people, and so you've got given these jobs and you're put into it. So it's not like, I'm sneaking in and doing trying to steal something in the sense of at the middle of the night. It's more okay, I've got these chances. There's
these patrols with
the Metal Gear Solid levels of
suspicion levels.
That sound if this what sort of going, and you could try and get yourself out of them, and then you've got a very complicated role-playing situations where you've got to deal with with that, which I think is more interesting. Whilst the but then the Reach of the Stars one, because of its body horror and there's lots of characters involved, that's a very role-playing heavy in the sense that people that have been twisted and morphed by it, some that are agreeing with the ideology of the person that's in charge, the person that don't. You've got this disembodied head of the previous adventurers who's there as your guide. I mean, such a great characterization. And then and you hit the Tockworth and you're these are all so far one's kind of gets you in the thing, one's a casino but not great, but I get it. It's my personal opinion. I think, but what was good about lots of different ways to play gambling games with dice, which is always fun.
And you can I've got it, the free Dragon Ante. You can actually play that game instead. And I mean, props and selling more things, absolutely. But I thought that's cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, I
like that. And so Reach of Stars gives you a whole different thing with the whole Far Realm, and it's all warped and there's fun little magical stuff. Prison 13, then something more role play, and the Tockworth the city sort of map that you've got to run around.
Yes,
and then you hit the sort of trudge, as I like to call it, because I got to this point and I was just come on now.
The masterpiece Imbroglio, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Imbroglio.
Apologies. Imbroglio. Yeah. Where you go into clearly some sort of thieves guild to steal a painting, which is magical and speaks.
I love the painting. The sort of what's his name, Dorian Gray painting.
Very good, very Dorian Gray. Isn't it? Yeah, and
it's kind of it's great in its own right, but once you've had something like these ones that were so
individual
and had a real characteristic to it, I felt this one went back to a basic D&D adventure, and I kind of was a bit disappointed by it, but it's still fun. It's just I think it just lacked I agree, the levels that the other ones had started to. Well, if that was the first one, I wouldn't say. If you swap this with any other one, it's I'm using this one as as the example because it was at the end. If that was the first one, I probably would think, it's a great first introduction to heists.
Yes,
but it was okay, but we don't need. We then get Axe from the Grave, which is
the magical weapon thing. Which again, it's a very nice idea, but again, it does feel like this is something that you and I would have come up with, which I know it's more that's not a comment on us, but it's
it was just another generic heist. I mean, it had something cool about the ideas, and I love the idea, but the story behind it was really great,
good,
but then there was there wasn't something particular to the actual adventure part of it that I was this is giving me something special, apart from some interesting characters and an interesting place to muck about in. Vidorant's vault.
I mean, it's a nice sort of reverse in a way. You're breaking into a vault and then meet the thief, and then you could be like, here's the twist of it. But again, I guess it feels a lot similar.
But that and Master Imbroglio were basically the same.
It feels very similar to that, and also it feels like maybe Prisoner 13 could be the prelude to that, if you see what I mean. Like you could, I mean, again, as we always say, you can do whatever you want, and you can mix and match them. But it just feels a bit like. Again, I would expect that as an earlier, like, you could do, like, if anything, a couple of these ones, I was expecting to be, like, round level 3, or, like, here's some introduction ones, and maybe rather than doing it in order of, like, one thing, you could just be like, here are the introduction ones, you do one of these, and then you go up to the next level, which is the mid-tier one, and then the later tier one.
I just think if you were running this, if you were going to run all of these, I would sort of find that your players probably would get a little bit bored between Master Imbroglio and Fedora's Vault, because they'd just be like, okay, we're doing the same thing over and over again. But then you get the Shard of the Accursed, which then brings you back up, and really good. Loved it.
So good. This idea, again, this person has stolen the heart of the king, and then they have just been left there. And it just, that
no,
means
no, this is not this one. That's not this one. That's the next one. That's Heart of Ashes. Shard of the Accursed is the one where you've got the shard that you've got to put back into the vault.
You know what it is? It's because they both say heart in their summary.
Yeah. No, it's so that's the one with the heart has been stolen from it's a really great story behind it, which is good. But it did give you this different thing, which is that you've got a lot more role playing because there's people involved with a lot of intrigue and this character who sort of has guilt involved with like having stolen it in the first place and died by the curse that it gives you. This curse that you can deal with if your characters. I would make sure a character gets the curse because 100%. I think that then gives you the additional thing that works into the whole quality of it. And this is one of the ones that relates to one of the planes in Radiant Citadel, and so it kind of has this real history to it and a lot of stuff there and a little bit of intrigue, political intrigue, because there's politics that are dealing like. One of the politicians has sort of allowed this to happen, and that's kind of makes that kind of cool.
What I like being surprised by with these events, and certainly quite a number of these adventures, is going, oh my god, I didn't even think that was a heist. You know, and it just so happens that all the tropes are there, but it's not a heist. Because this is the thing, and I'm going to say this, and I appreciate we've gone into a half an hour of us talking about it. I'm not a big heist film fan. I can't be bothered with
really.
Like for me, I really like it's ultimately it's about the relationships, right? I'm not a James Bond fan. I'm not a Mission Impossible fan. Although when you rewatch it, there's some absolutely crazy stuff in there. You're like, what the fuck is going on in the stunts? But for me, what I love is stuff like. And I appreciate this, it's a very niche British reference, but the BBC Hustle, where you had the little gang of people who are playing people off and stuff like that, I mean, obviously, which is very different to this, because obviously they're basically Robin Hooding people for their own gain. But I quite liked how, because most of the time you were like, well, there's a tension of like, oh, the young upstart is going to take over from the old dog, and they're fighting for their ideas and all that sort of thing. You have my favorite character, Ash, who's just like comes up with all the shit essentially, but is also playing a guard, is also playing the cleaner, is all is playing the lawyer. And I don't know, there's something about it for me. It's about the relationships of people doing stuff. So for me, the story is important, and giving those characters for the team to bounce off of or to bond against is more important than you got to go steal this MacGuffin from a generic place. So so that's the thing for me. And what was always interesting with Hustle was that they was always targeting a person rather than a MacGuffin, so to speak. So that's the thing for me. And this
happens a couple of times in this day. Like the Stygian Gambit is about getting back at the guy who stole the money from the other gambler who's and there are some great RP bits in that, aren't there?
Exactly. So I think overall the giant one with the curses, again, it's just so interesting because for me, I didn't see that as a heist, and instantly I was like, "Oh, what could this be?" So I don't know. It made me now go, maybe I should watch these films. Maybe I should do a marathon of Oceans.
Have you not watched Oceans? I mean, I did do a marathon of Oceans the other week. Actually,
well, there you go.
It was on my mind, and then I thought, well, I'll watch them all, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy James Bond to a certain extent. Mission Impossible, I've never got beyond. I've watched 1 or 2 after 3, but I don't remember any of them. Like I watched
same thing. They go into a very similar pattern where there's always somebody running, jumping off a building.
It just became a vehicle for Tom Cruise jumping off things, yeah, basically. So like the other Steven Soderbergh one, the one about the NASCAR one, the
Lucky Logan.
Lucky Logan. That's
but again, it's got some very interesting characters doing the heist.
But that's why Ocean's 11's kind of interesting, and Ocean's 8 as well. Ocean's 8 is actually
Ocean 8. I love Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8 is hilarious, and that whole bit when they're at that ball is just like. That gala, and that's the other thing, a gala. You need a gala.
You do need a gala, because I think the gala is technically in that first one with the museum, but I think you could make, again, if you're going to make your own, 100% you'd do a gala.
Exactly, yeah.
Like I said, so the sort of interesting one I find, like the Heart of Ashes one, so that one that was before, that the king's heart is stolen away.
Surprise, surprise! Fiona likes the creepy, ghoulish one.
Oh, but it's great, and I just
beautiful artwork as well.
The artwork of the king. I mean, absolutely throughout. But this image of this king with no heart and looking like just drained and is a villain, and just having that moment. It's the moral choices, right? And,
and that building with that floating object, and you have to fly up to get the castle, the tower that's detached from the castle.
Yes, so good.
And the name's Gasoline. Like, what a cool place.
What a cool name. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And a really good, loads of different ways that they can finish. Like the conclusion has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different endings to it to a certain extent. And one of them, if you enter the void, you get 20d6 necrotic damage. You're like, that's kind of the stuff you want at level 10, 11, isn't it? I think it's 10.
Level 8 for the
it's even 8
for Heart of Ashes. But Hamilton, we have to do a pause here and talk about our favorite.
So I was going to say, this is the thing. You kind of go through all these. You get a little bit bored in the middle. Then you think, oh, okay, it's picking up a bit. But I must admit, I was getting to this point and I was like, there's a really cool one coming up, isn't there? When is it coming up? It's going to blatantly be the last one, but it wasn't.
No.
Because the best damn adventure made since for a very long time.
Yes, the affair on the Concordant Express. Essentially, it is Murder on the Orient Express, but in the multiverse. It's on its way to Mechanus, so it's got Modrons on board.
It's literally, Fiona, it's like, trains, tick. Okay. Planescape, tick. Modrons, triple tick.
Yeah.
Mind Flayer, detectives,
tick.
Quadruple tick.
Yeah.
Multiple choice of carriage choice. All these things.
So that's the thing. So you can make up the carriage choice, and essentially it is you're breaking somebody out of the prison, but you can go through all these things. You have to talk to Modrons.
A Modron who's gone rogue. A rogue Modron as well.
Rogue Modron. And the carriage, you don't have to include it, but yes, as you sort of rightly pointed out, with it's like Ignatius Inkblot or something like that.
Ignatius Inkblot.
Clearly, at the time of writing, obviously, it's trying to refer to a Hercule Poirot, but. Yes. I'm sure you know, Hamilton, you're going to do Benoit Blanc's voice for,
I
Ignatius.
Don't say.
What is this occurring on this train in space?
Yes.
I can't even do it. But
and then he goes over there and he's going to get shot in the heart like that. And you got to heart is a great word to say. And it's
I feel like
he's an idiot. Sorry, that's a spoiler. Spoiler.
I feel the theme of it is obviously Daniel Craig does he does a serious James Bond stuff.
Lucky Logan,
and then he does Benoit Blanc, and just has he's like, I'm having the best time. Fuck you guys.
So. Glass Onion is I bloody love that. I mean, I'm a massive Janelle Monáe fan as well. I liked her music for quite a long time as well. Yeah. So she's amazing, and Edward Norton is bloody good as well. So
you can tell. Again, I didn't enjoy it as much as Knives Out, but I could tell that everyone.
Really?
Yeah. We'll get onto it.
I wasn't as big a fan as Knives Out, to be honest. I watched it and I was like, not as good. I didn't think.
Interesting.
I the Glass Onion. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think in general is just that, watching those films, it gives you that sense of what that adventure could be about, the affair on the Concordant Express. And this idea of the stranger as well, the description of them, this idea that they're just like there with a hat over their face, but when they move, you never see their face. It's always blurred because they know all the names to all these fiends and stuff. And so they are a danger, and they're happily to give you out a list of the names for their freedom. And then they just jump off the train and I'm just like, this is the coolest thing.
So Fiona, I had a theory about this one, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a train car, which is the planetarium car, right? Mm-hmm. And it's got a short tube rising from the floor on the dice, and you can put a slot, donation money, and when you put £10 of treasure, Cosmo, the illusory Modron, appears, and Cosmo will give a brief lecture on any plane of existence as described in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I've got a homebrew for all of you at home, right? Now, what you should do is you should rename those like Hamo and Fofo, right?
Hamo and Fofo.
Hamo and Fofo, and then play each episode of the DM's Travel Book Club, which you can find on our YouTube channel.
Just put it like a proper like holodeck type thing with computer talking over it, but it's just us in the background, and then players are like, "Oh, stop it, turn it off,
crap up with these people." But you're like, "No, you've paid your 10 GB. You have to now sit here for 45 minutes and listen to a lecture about each of the planes of existence."
Or even you put 10 people, wow, okay, we'll just play all.
Yeah, exactly.
16 hours of content. No,
So,
absolutely.
no, it just made me laugh because I was just imagining. I just would love to see us imagined as Modrons giving a lectures. It is really fun, and the fact that you can there's little things in each one that reminds me. It just brought me back to those old D&D adventures, particularly the ones in the Yawning Portal. Like what's the one that we did? Forget the. White Plume Mountain.
Yeah.
You know, had little rooms with the aquarium car, and if you drain it of the aquarium, there's a plug that you can actually pull out, and there's an angelic statue. There's a deva that talks to you, and it's kind of, I don't know, there's lots of little like fun little moments which I really enjoyed. And unfortunately, we can't find out who wrote what in the online version. It is in supposedly in the book version. It will tell you. I've seen people reviewing it saying it does say in the book who the author of each one was.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
But yeah, then having this murder mystery in the middle, just
because again, it's that sort of thing. You're here to do a job, and then you're like, oh shit, because obviously the mind flayer will know everything about you because it can read your thoughts. So. And
then the jumping in with Steel, which is the alternate, like, which I bringing it in right at the end, I thought was kind of a bit of a shame, because I thought how they should have made that a thing. You know, they said the rival crew. They should have just had. If you want to use the Steel, this is what Steel will do. Steel will do Steel are like the Hydra. They're like the Hydra to the shield of the Golden Vault. And I just thought they should have had a Steel does this if you don't do this sort of thing.
Yes,
if you
a proper timer on it.
Yeah. Because to pick them up on the third to last episode is a bit like, oh, that's a shame, because they could have been working, and it goes, they could have been working for the Stygian Gambit person or the Master of Brilliant. It's like, well, why not put them in then?
Make the mention of it, like to have it earlier in the book as well. The other thing to note about that, so I do think I know who wrote that one, because it talks about where the train leaves from. So it's a Karen Sangar, which is the Radiant Citadel place. So that's the place with Atash the Solar, and it's the Shadows of the Sun is the adventure where basically you go and there's a big uprising because they don't want Atash ruling anymore, because it's a bit of a So what I'm doing just now, I'm actually running Shadows of the Sun, and I'm hoping that once they finished it, we can go, and now you see someone being taken away onto a train. You better go and investigate.
Then you can do it. Yes.
Yeah, that's my plan, essentially, because, very excited for that.
The Stranger is clearly going to sound like, what's his name? Clint Eastwood, isn't it? Because that's basically what they made. Let me guess, you want a name. Maybe more than one. Got a pen.
It's the coolest fucking dude ever, right?
And then the furnace.
Yeah, the furnace as well.
You have to feed it with treasure. And I'm like, it doesn't ever mention, it's like it's got 3,500 gold pieces, 6. And you're just like, that's the heist, right? There's all the money.
Yeah.
It's the train.
So I'm going to talk about the final two things.
Yes.
So you know how we talked about Agala? Well, the penultimate one is about Agala. It's the party at Palset Hall, where essentially a beautiful woman has basically holds a grand gala every year during the winter solstice, but she has some sort of necklace around her, which you have to steal for whatever reason, because there are people concerned about her behaviors change quite a bit, and of course. I'm sure you can guess, Hamilton, there is an eldritch entity within the jewels, and it has taken her over, and she is now trapped inside the necklace. And
so she's inside the necklace, and
there's hags, there's all that sort of malarkey. So it's just interesting how this idea that somebody's changed their. It's very much like the Ice Queen and the Snow Queen, even all that sort of thing, that people change because of some sort of cursed artifact or anything like that. So you have to go and take it out. Essentially, because that's right, it's replaced her with simulacrum of this thing and being controlled by, while her sort of spirit has been put away into the shard itself. So very cool. really interesting.
Yeah, you can fight some high level beings in that one as well if you so wish.
Yeah.
And then what was the last one? Because again, these are the last two I hadn't got round to.
Yeah.
I got so excited by the Concordant Express. I was like, done. Don't need any more.
So yes, the final one is called Fire and Darkness, and basically, you have to
steal the Book of Vile Darkness from an Afriti.
Your contact is an Arcanoloth, who are one of our best friends. The sort of foxy like looking creatures, and it's bad news.
Yeah, and it has a faction from Sigil, which is the Fated, which are also known as the Takers, is their nickname. And so they are basically their idea is that you if you want something, you must take it, and don't give nothing. No one's going to give you anything. You got to take it by force. And they're not a very nice group of people in the faction of Sigil, but they are turning up, which leads me on to my theory. My feeling on this is there is a lot, obviously, of planar things in this. Yes. And it is very much like, hey, here's a load of things that you can find out about the planes. There's plane shifting all over the shop. The person, you're going around on a train that goes through. We didn't mention in the Concordant Express, it goes through different planes and has effects that relate to each of the planes. So you're going through Pandemonium. There's a howling wind, and you can't go outside of the car without taking damage. Yeah, it goes through a cold part of hell. It talks about different layers of the 9 hells. It talks about Celestia, and there's like a radiant boon, and no one can go to 0 hit points. Yeah, I just felt like that, and that happened with Stygia is one of the realms in hell. And you've got this, which talks about the Fated, which are a Sigil faction, and the Concordant Express is the domain of concordant energy, I think is the other term for the Outlands. Right. It's like the traditional term. That's why it's called the Concordant Express, because of that's the old term for the Outlands.
That's very cool. I like that. Yeah, to finally talk about the end of that Fire and Darkness. So yes, not only do you have this Afriti, which is obviously scary enough in itself, you have this cult, but also the cult is come to worship some sort of red dragon, which has died due to what the Afriti's done. So they're going to try and bring it back as a Dracolich. And you're just like going, none of this stuff is good. So there's lots of Warzone stuff happening whilst you're getting in there to grab this book to return back to your Arcanoloth handler or contact, who will then, it says, probably betray you. So there's a lot. There's a lot in there. And like you said, so you go all the way from like your fun Indiana Jones hijinks, Tomb Raider style thing, all the way to, oh my God, what is going on? What the world is ending because of this Book of Vile Darkness.
And having been someone who's read the Book of Vile Darkness, because I had it, you can get it from 2E and you can find it on the DM's Guild if you so wish. It's not a good book to read. It's not fun.
Horrible.
It is horrible. But it's also it's the plane of concordant opposition. Sorry, that's what
concordant opposition. There we go. Overall, really interesting. I feel excited by it. I always feel excited about the.
I was reading it and going, if I was someone that still did a lot of streaming, or I was looking for something to stream, I think this would be a great thing to stream. Like, 100%. Let's get a crew together. You could do bits in between if you so wish, but you could just do it like each week or each month. It's like, okay, your mission, if you choose to accept it, adventurers, and you could have a nexus where they're just in Sigil, and it's like, you get pumped into wherever you need to be and go. And it would be so easy to run, so much fun, and I think you would have an absolute blast.
I agree.
Even the ones in the middle where it does get a little bit samey, I think once you've got to that point in the campaign, you'd each know each other and have just a bit of fun.
Yeah, I think overall, again, my one little stipulation, which I know seems so weird compared to previously, or we expect these ones to be like an introductory adventure. I just wish we'd had higher levels. I just wish we'd gone up.
Why is there not a level? I mean, I know it takes a lot, and to balance that, you can imagine the amount of things that people can do at level 20, but stipulate, you like just take magic away from people, or just say like, here's like, if you want to enjoy this, like, or you can do it however you want, but if you went down the route of like, okay, everyone's got to be a rogue, right, and a thief or something like that, and here's a level 20 adventure.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to have, because I know other obviously RPGs we both know from Blade Runner and Alien, they have cinematic things with pre-generated characters that you could do. It'd be great to have if you're thinking like, oh, I'm not so sure, you could be like, okay, a generic, I don't know, fight.
Actually, having a party for each one would be quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can have it so, like, for example, in Alien, you can have it like, here's their specialities, etc., but also their rivals and buddies within the group and any secret agenda. So you can make it like that. Cool. Talking about that sort of relationships and that focus on that could be something, again, cool thing to play off. But at the same time, you don't need it. But yeah, in D&D, the only time you get those pre-gen characters is the starter set, and you're always level 1. And I would love it if you're like, okay, here's the adventure, and here is 4 suggested level 15 characters, and just I don't know. I do think it's tricky.
I totally agree. But it is also like, you make the game, okay? Like, you should be able to know how to, with the time and money and energy that you have available to you, be able to make, particularly when it comes to these sorts of things. Fine, you're not going to make campaigns that run all the way up to level 20 to a certain extent, but I don't know. I think of that Doomed Forgotten Realms we talked about. That is something that someone's made a series of campaign that runs all the way through to you fighting Vecna, and freaking Matt Mercer's able to make level 20. Every DM's able to run level 20 campaigns. Why cannot D&D, the people at Wizards of the Coast who make D&D, put something out there?
Are they scared that we won't buy it because we'll never get to? Because we will buy stuff like that.
But people are going to use these as one shots, and who doesn't want to play a level 20 one shot like that? I don't understand that. I
go back to Uncaged Goddesses, which is that ultimate level, like level 4 tier. Everyone's level 20, and you're fighting against gods, and it's not a good idea. It's that sort of I don't know.
But they're about to. They've already hit planes. Like, you could go to just choose a super califragilisticexpialidocious plane with some god that you've got to take down, or like, I don't know, Sigil, Lady of Pain. She's literally god tier. No one, even level 20, can't beat them. But like, hopefully.
I wonder if it's just because maybe, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, maybe it just gets to a point where it just becomes, it is more about the combat at those higher levels rather than the role play.
But then that's exactly what you do, isn't it? You don't make it combative, and it's about, like, you make you
have more conditions, like no magic, or no one flies, or
like really complicated things that need to be solutioned. Like, here's
it's more time-based.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Like, you've got literally add. Someone's literally got to put a sand timer down. You've got to make your decisions now.
I think that's the one thing I take away from this, is that I would definitely try and play these in person, which I know is not available to everybody. But if so, then I would 100%. I think you've converted me when we did our Blade Runner thing. Is just, I love a good prop, and I think having physical items to give out to people, like the map. Having it out, if you're doing the Gambit one, having free Dragon Ante or whatever it is, and doing it there as a game within a game.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that takes a lot of prep, but the payoff would be so good.
100%.
So different. And so I think you could just do so much of it as a result.
I think my only final thought on the level 20 thing, which just got me thinking about, I totally agree on handouts, and I love them in the Blade Runner thing, and it is a really, so if you're in person, it's just so nice. It's just, But I think the level 20 thing is, people think, because it's level 20, we want to use all our high level gear. But I think what it is, it's like, I'm just thinking, like, you could do a heist that requires high level spell slots. Like, so I'm thinking they've talked about plane shifting here. Like, what if you need to, like, shift to different planes in order to do different things? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, you need to go to the plane of radiance so that you get imbued with radiant energy, so you get over high level hit points. Nearly, if you go over double your hit points, you die. But you have to stay there, time it perfectly, jump back in so that you can run through fire, and then I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know, something like that.
A time trial-esque type thing.
Yeah, I don't know, really, like, complicated things, or just like I did in the, go to a demon lord's castle in the abyss, and you've got to deal with, like, shifting things, and I don't know, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. Someone do it.
I think, as along with the pre-generated characters for higher level, I think if you're getting to a higher level and you've not played it through, I think sometimes one thing I found is that if you start them up, they might not have, they're like, do we have any magic items? Do we have anything? I think having a list, we talked before about the queues list of MacGuffins. I think having a list for every single heist you do, that you get stuff, and you could roll randomly on the magic tables for stuff, or you could, like, you needed something of a particular item, like I don't know, a skeleton key that only works for 2 times, and then that's it. I think having a list for those for higher up, that could mitigate anything if you like. It's not as much combat, or there's not a lot more sneaking, but you have all these magical items or
you know
things to
what,
help
Fiona?
you.
Fiona, I've just had an idea. Okay.
Yeah.
What you would do for level like 15 is you've got to go back in time and beat yourselves at getting all of the items, because what you realize is by righting all these wrongs, you change the course of history and it causes all the problems. So now you've got to go back. But remember, and your DM knows this before they do this, so they make notes of certain things you've got to do.
No.
And you've got to do the Avengers, go back and steal them before they steal the heist of the heist. So it's the Avengers story. But there's a high level one.
There you go, high level. Yeah, get your time stones, get your Mordekaiden doing a big bubble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you've got to. There you go.
Done. Thank you, Hamilton, for allowing me to indulge in it's actually really good. And I know obviously there's a lot of stuff going on about D&D just now, and still probably will do for many years. And I just want people. It's so tricky because I know if you're boycotting Wizards, if you're boycotting something, fine. I do think this is a cracking product. I think this is the best one of this year so far, which I know is not so much because it is the first one, but I still think Radiant Citadel, Candlekeep Mysteries, this one, they add so much and they're so interesting, and there's just so much in such few pages. So I think if you're interested in running something, an adventure on a different plane, certainly Radiant Citadel and Golden Vault, I would check out.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think if anything made me feel just like I had not felt good about talking or thinking about D&D until I read this. And this is the perfect sort of palate cleanser of okay, they've done some bad things, sorry, but they've sort of undone a bit of those, but I still was feeling a bit icky about it. But this was just it is a fun, enjoyable thing, and it's written by the people that have nothing to do with that, it's 100%. Written by, and so all credit to them and their hard work. And I feel bad for saying the ones in the middle were boring. They are great heists. They still are.
You always have to have ones that, I don't want to say filler, but are filler. But I think all of them I would be happy to run. Exactly. I think all of them are really interesting, and some of them just grab my attention more than others, for sure.
100%. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and whoever wrote Fire on the Concord Express needs to write more of that. I want that as a whole storyline. Yes, and what's coming next? I think it's Giants, isn't it? Next on the list.
Yes, it is.
Is that right?
Giants?
I don't know anyone who likes Giants. Do you?
So the Giants. What is it? Big B's Thingy of Giants or something?
It is. I'm looking at the thing.
Should have it up, shouldn't I? But I don't.
I can't read it, it's too small, but it's Big B presents Glory of the Giants, which we have a spring 23. We don't have an actual release date, do we?
No. So I'm guessing, but this is the thing, as they did with Spelljammer, they might undercut Golden Vault's promotion with Giants is coming out to move away from it, perhaps to whatever. But I think to be fair, the next big thing for them is the film, so we might not hear anything about
until after the film. But spring though, they've got it's got probably maybe it's May time or something like that.
It's May time. Interestingly enough, which I'm sure everyone here knows it, but it's just because I only really connected the dots. The Prisoner 13 prison, it's in the film.
Yes, we didn't mention that. Yeah, Rebel's End.
And the D&D film is also pretty much a heist. So everything's connected. Yeah. Heist seems to be the flavor of the month just now, everyone, which is fine.
I wonder if the Golden Vault are actually going to appear. If that's the
that would be so fucking cool. Actually, if that does appear, I think.
You know what? I'm really not interested in this.
No, I know. Me neither. I'm still going to watch it.
I read a really interesting piece. There was a really interesting piece it was Dicebreaker, a very interesting piece about do we need another jokey everything's so humorous fantasy storyline when some of the most quoted and favorite fantasy movies are the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit, which they have comedy and humor in them, but the focus is a serious storyline.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like we've talked about it before, and we've not joked about it. It'll be cool for me. D&D is such a personalized experience that I do have it that it's people around the table. So unless they include a scene with Chris Pine and Hugh Grant around the table, but they're not going to do that. But I do think it is definitely played ideal reality versus actual reality. Sort of the verses, and
I just think it's I think if you want to I've said this before on here as well, if you want to go watch a good load of D&D themed movies, just watch the Marvel movies. They are literally just D&D campaigns it has movies, and they've got the humor, and that's how it works. They've got that human humor of a party of people who have no idea what they're fucking doing most of the time, having to save the world, and that's kind of what's great about it. And
with a lot of combat,
a lot of combat, a lot of flaws, a lot of moving around the things, and they're humorous and they are human as well, to a certain extent, or human in their own weird way, in the sense that they're, like like Thor is a god, but he has got these human flaws to him, which is funny. Whilst I don't think the Dungeons and Dragons movie, my personal opinion is I think it'd be so good if it was Dungeons and Dragons, like, set, like, I don't know, just like here's Elminster, or here's like Volo, or Fizban the Traveler, like as a, or I don't know. Drizzt the movie. I think they should have just done Drizzt the movie.
100%.
Then it would have been fine.
I guess the thing of what it looks like is like, this is what D&D fans want, rather than rather than creating something new,
And let's make something that's like a D&D environment, which is like what I mean by the Marvel movies. Whilst if they said, okay, I know Drizzt is like Drizzt as well, isn't it? But like is like all they do is Drizzt, and there are lots of other great storylines out there. But like, I think if you started with that, you could go edgy, like sort of quite, there's some really, like the complications that that Drizzt has to deal with. There's there's the whole Mesobaranzan sort of like hierarchy, like it's intensely like political structure, and these sort of like these families that are trying to vie for their position on this ladder of importance. You've got characters that aren't really explored so much, like deep gnomes that he interacts with, and you've got black puddings because it's all underground, and you've got the Underdark, and that leads you on to aboleths, and then maybe the Far Realm, and you could just go into these things that no other like storyline apart from the Marvel movies are dealing with. I don't know, or a movie in Sigil, or a movie in Sigil.
I was thinking to myself, what if any of the adventures which adventure would I like to see like made into a film? I think Out of the Abyss would be a really good one.
That's a great one.
Like all the different, like, the Jubilex and not Jubilex, but like
Jubilex are the type of thing, but you mean Zuctamoy is a
Zuctamoy. So good. So that idea that they're coming together and forming, and just I think that would be rather than what I suspect and what has sort of been hinted at is Red Wizards and Vecna.
Well, but even like talking about the Red Wizards, like Horde of the Dragon Queen leading into the rise of Tiamat. I mean, fucking Tiamat, you've got a 5-headed dragon. Like, there's a boss. Like, I don't know, that everyone can get behind. I know Vecna because of like Stranger Things, but again, you've got Stranger Things.
But Stranger Things, you've got Critical Role. It's tricky. It's tricky because it's like, well, which one will people more likely to see? And I think if you just put D&D on it, people will see it no matter what.
That's what I mean. So, but I think if you put Drizzt on there, you'd get people going.
Come, Canterbury, count my kills. Let's sign off. As I thank you so much, Hamilton. Is there anything you would like to plug or recommend? Is there anything? What should we be looking out for in the future?
Well, as we mentioned last time, we did a non-planar show, so I don't know where this fits in the whole timeline of things that are going out.
It'll be after the OGL one that comes out,
and that's before we go into the next. Have we done the Planes of Chaos yet? I don't know.
No, Planes of Chaos will have aired.
Sorry, Planes of Law.
Yes, Planes. It's part 2. Aired, yes,
already. So by now, you maybe at some point soon. As we talk, we last Saturday had recorded a Blade Runner show with Fiona being an amazing. You'll hear the amorphous voice of Fiona shouting, "Push the roll, push the roll!" to everyone.
Do it.
And very kindly giggling at some of our stupid inane jokes. That, as I've been just found out this afternoon, that's going to be pushed up in front of Bowie's, because Bowie's personally is a personal pet project. I've been listening to Tony Scott on YouTube telling people just get things out there and don't put too much time in it. But yes, okay, fine, I'm going to. I can't help it. So, but Blade Runner is actually, because thanks to Fiona and the sort of timekeeping and our sort of need to get it done in a day, we did all the episodes that I think that is kind of easy and ready to go, and that gives me a little extra time to work on other things, so hopefully that will be coming out soon. And if it is out now, maybe we could put an amorphous voice in that says it's out now, or it'll be out soon.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Hopefully next week it'll be being edited, and hopefully soon it'll be out. So
it's very good. Well, so speaking of Blade Runner as well,
Yes.
Hopefully, well, we're working on it as of recording, but maybe it'll be out at the same time as the Blade Runner thing. But we'll be doing possibly our first couple of episodes of the GM's Book Club.
GM's Book Club.
I know. Look, we've been very narrow. Oh,
we need to think of
maybe we should go.
We talked about it beforehand, haven't we? We've been talking about it for a while. Yeah, it's a cognitive resonance of the world, isn't it? Universe, like, sheep in Wales learn to roll over sheep grills at the same time in New Zealand, that sort of thing. Like, everyone starts to feel we need to move away from D&D, and D&D just goes and shoots itself in the foot. So
pretty much, yeah. So we're going to be looking at stuff like Blade Runner, The One Ring for sure, and a couple of other ones that we have set up recording, but we need to confirm it just because I keep forgetting.
Yeah, I think I know what they are. But
me too.
You've heard us talk about them in other places before as well,
Definitely.
and I think it's like we'll keep running. We need to think of a good intro, Fiona.
We do need to.
Welcome to the GM's Book Club, a guide to the books,
a guide to your role playing. I don't know. We'll have to think of something.
Each episode, we look at another TTR. No, that's crap. No,
let me write it.
This is how our workshopping goes. Oh right, yeah, this is how our workshopping goes. Hamilton says a load of random shit, and Fiona goes away and just does it.
Writes it in 2 sentences. Yes, absolutely. But and so if you're listening to this, hopefully it will be promoting it anyway. But if you've got a suggestion for a role playing game that you'd like to see covered, please let us know, and so that we can ask for press copies, or like I'm sure one of us has a copy of it somewhere. It's probably me. I do have
Fiona.
Just because we want to explore different role-playing systems that
my wife has definitely told me you're not allowed to buy it anymore.
Oh, well, there you go then.
Until you sell other ones. Okay, I was like,
oh, bless. You see, I just ignore my partner. But so it's basically we want to look at different. We said this in a previous episode, but this idea that we want to look at systems that help us create stories we want to tell, and sometimes Fifth Edition doesn't do that, and that's okay. And there's definitely some really interesting ones both in The One Ring and in Blade Runner. I think it looks at it very differently. We won't necessarily be covering Alien, even though I'm running currently an Alien campaign just now, just because it is very similar to Blade Runner in certain aspects. But we'll be looking at different role-playing games, not just from Free League. It just so happens that we both quite love Free League stuff, because they're not very different. But I'm sure
we've got stuff from potentially Cubicle 7, and you've mentioned one from an alternate source.
Rowan, Rook and Descartes, possibly.
Rowan, Rook and Descartes. That was
with Die role-playing game.
Yes.
But we'd love to hear people's recommendations for stuff. Again, we'll get to them because as people know, any of these role-playing games are quite thick and heavy, and there's quite a lot to read through when we're also doing our own stuff and DM's Book Club.
Well, fortunately, we've just played Blade Runner, so I know that one. I've also read all of One Ring, so I'm already ahead on that one. So
exactly.
We're ahead of ourselves.
We're ahead of ourselves before inevitably we're not.
Fiona's played all games there are ever anyway, so we're fine already.
I mean, humble, but yes, true.
Humble, but brag. Anyway, what can we do about getting some free stuff for cheap? Not free stuff for cheap, but some stuff for cheap.
I was like, what a roundabout. Yes. So if you'd like to get 10% off your first order at Third Space Gaming, which is your friendly local game store in Burnley, just type in the offer code DMVC into checkout and you get 10% off. And it could be on terrain, it could be on dice, it could be on paints. They also are the only people in the UK that I'm aware of that have a 1,000-year-old vampire to sell on that front, or the only UK stock person, because otherwise it takes like a physical stock, because otherwise it takes fucking ages to come. But
really?
There you go. It's very specialized. But yes, so please check them out, please support them. And that's it in terms of everything else. So
Is that what about who you are, where you are, what you are, and when you are?
When am I? So my name's Fiona. Okay. Okay, my name's Fiona. Where am I? I'm in my bedroom. I'm recording this with you. How am I? I'm okay, and work's rubbish, but I get to do stuff like this. I get to talk about the Golden Vault. But where am I? I'm so glad you asked. So What Am I Rolling is a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very, very well. We have released now, of time of recording, Yazeba's Bed of Breakfast, which is a Jade Dragon, which if you've read Wander Home, if you've read Sleepaway, but essentially it is a conversation type game using like tokens and stuff like that. It's a slice of life RPG, and it is so bloody wholesome. Like when I listened to the end of it, because we all worked together to do a surprise birthday party for somebody who doesn't like their birthday, we got to the end of it. We managed to pull it off just because we all got very tense suddenly, like, oh, we must do it. And we were being very silly and stuff. And then at the end, after we finished recording, I had a little cry because it was very beautiful. So I would recommend Usaber's Bed and Breakfast. It's not out yet, the full version. It'll be out later this year, but you can get the Ashcan version on Possum Creek Games website. The interviews coming up with Di. We've got the Backwater Bastards are coming on at some point. We did a recording with them called I think it's called Beyond the Neighborhood, it's either Beyond or Beneath the Neighborhood. I'll check once I've finished. I keep forgetting. Which is basically like your Gravity Falls, Adventure Time type thing, Saturday morning cartoons, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, I've got a few other bits and pieces coming up, and it's just all go at where headquarters,
where HQ.
Where HQ, exactly.
Awesome. Well, that's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to hearing the Backwater Bastards one. I bet that's I can imagine it's amazing.
It was an absolute joy to record as well. But yes, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be doing more in-person stuff in the future. I know we've not committed to anything, but it was so much fun.
It was so much fun. I'm like, this has to happen again. It just requires me to pull a lot of strings together to do it. Yeah. That's the thing, because it requires financial investment as well, which
it does.
So yeah, because we were very kind to be supported by Free League for that. So that's what makes it possible. But yeah, we need to.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's always a nice pipe dream to do in the future, I think so.
I think so. Anyway.
But until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of the planes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, because what will be next? It will be the Planes of Conflict.
Conflict. Conflict.
Oh, they're good. They're good ones. They are really good ones. We were all surprised every time with those.
Yeah, I was about to say, you'll be surprised by number 11.
Oh my gosh, we should so do one of those. They talked about all 16 planes, but you wouldn't know what they found at number 12.
Yeah, exactly. Until next time, folks, thank you so much, and we'll see you
on the flip side of the planes. See ya.
On the planes.